Good morning and welcome to my Inspirational Cafe. I trust that you've had a good week. Have you ever found yourself in a fight? I don't mean a physical fight. I mean you find yourself in the ring with life's issues. Professional boxing is a brutal sport. What are the issues you perhaps are facing this morning? What are you fighting in life's ring? Depression, separation, divorce, fear, doubt, anxiety, financial struggles. What are you fighting this morning? I want to give you some insight and perhaps give you some help, tips on how you can get through the fight. I thought about my life and I reflected specifically on a time during the year of 2000 where my family and I faced a horrible crisis. I found myself in life's ring. I found myself fighting for survival. I'm a woman of faith, so I went to the Bible and I started reading the story of David and Goliath. I immediately, of course, identified with David, a youth, a lad, and all he had was a rock, a stone. He had the audacity to believe that he could conquer this giant. And I quickly learned something, that faith and fear often stand side by side. I think most of you would agree that Muhammad Ali was one of the greatest fighters of all times. I looked at the fight for the heavyweight championship of the world between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. Goliath wasn't very happy with David. He told him how he was going to basically annihilate him. Joe Frazier was told by Muhammad Ali that in the sixth round of the fight, Muhammad Ali told Joe Frazier that he was going to knock him out. Lesson 1. Never listen to your opponent. Your knees might be trembling. Your heart might be racing. But never believe your opponent. You see, David did not allow this 9-foot giant or taller to convince him that he could not defeat Goliath. And although I'm sure Joe Frazier had to have felt some type of fear, you're in the ring with one of the greatest boxers of all time. He did not allow Muhammad Ali's words to convince him that he could not beat Muhammad Ali. So as your opponent or whatever that issue is spitting you in the face, threatening you, you stand strong. As I watched the fight between these two men, I was waiting for one of them to give up and give in. And they went round for round. The commentators kept saying how conditioned they were and how they were in shape. And as a result, I start researching and reading, how do boxers train? What do they do? And one of the things that I learned when I was going through my difficult time was how to make a space in my place. And what I mean by that is a place that I could go to and get quiet. Boxers, many of them have training camps that are secluded, that are tucked away from family and friends and the paparazzi and the hoopla. And I find that when you get quiet, you can get strategy on how to beat your opponent. I know that many of our homes have been stretched. They become our offices, our restaurants, our movie theaters, our schools. But do you have a place in your space that you can go to, just you, and think and meditate and pray? I have my devotions every morning with coffee. I get up early in the morning so I can look at what's in front of me for the day. Some people use their closets. You might have to make a sign and put it on your door and say, for the next hour, please don't disturb me. You need to have a space in your place. So the men kept boxing. They kept going round for round. And of course, as they were injured, Joe Frazier's eyes were pretty messed up. Muhammad Ali took some blows and they They go back to their corners and you see their teams working on them and patching them up. Number 3, do you have a team? You know, in one of my inspirational messages, I asked the question, are you meeting the chickens for coffee or the eagles? You see, you need people on your team that are going to cover you, that are going to be there for you. You know, my husband and I have been married for 35 years. He's my best friend. We have a very close family, and we check on each other. We really check on each other. You need people that are going to ask you, are you really okay? You need a covering during this period of your life. You also need people that can step in the ring for you when you cannot take and afford another punch, or you risk being knocked out. You know, you hear on the news now that our country is experiencing food shortages or food deserts. But you know what we have right now? We have a people desert. People are desperately, in many instances, depending on their scenario, they feel alone. They feel forgotten about. You need a team. When I was going through that difficult time in my life, I can remember every one of those individuals. I see them clearly. Even though that was 20 years ago, how they covered me, how they were there for me, how they consoled me, how they had my back when I was weak. I was able to rest and regenerate myself. Do you have a team? The boxers kept fighting. They kept fighting. And as I learned, what keeps motivating professional boxers? What keeps them going? And my next tip is, don't lose your someday, because your someday allows you to fight another day. And what I mean by this is when you're going through a fight, you find yourself, I know I did, reflecting on your life. You find yourself saying, you know, when I get back on my feet someday, after I go through this horrible divorce, I gave it all I could give it. But someday, I might marry again. I'm struggling with my child. They're suffering from some depression, and they're having some mental health issues, and the doctors can't seem to get it right. But I'm believing that someday this is going to pass, and we're going to stabilize my child. I'm struggling financially right now, but I'm believing that someday I'm going to be able to pay all of my bills and have enough money to start a mutual fund. You see, when we lose hope in the midst of the fight, we're weakened. Never, ever, 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 ever lose your someday, no matter how dark it is, no matter how much it looks like that thing in the ring is going to defeat you. Your someday will encourage you and give you the strength to fight another day. By this time, it's round 15 with Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, and it's close. And by this time, I'm on my feet, and I'm looking, and I find my head bobbling with theirs, going, who's gonna win? They're against the ropes. And Joe Frazier knocks Muhammad Ali down. And the referee begins to do the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and Muhammad Ali gets back on his feet. He was shaken. He was weak, you could tell. But he got up. I don't want you to get knocked out. And if you find yourself this morning weakened, it's time for you to get up. Well, he gets up on his feet, and the announcers begin to announce the results. And Joe Frazier was declared the heavyweight champion of the world in that particular bout between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. The last thing I want to leave you with is this. When you get through the fight, what are the lessons that you can take from that fight? You know, when I went through that hard time in my life, and I had many more, of course, but I can remember vividly saying one Friday morning, because I worked in DC, I took the train to work every morning, and I love the train. I love going through Union Station, the aroma of the coffee, and it's nothing like the city. And I can remember saying, I don't want this to be in vain. Every fight that you come through, that you conquer, that you win, you now have tools that you didn't have before. Because life is going to always present fights. But the goal is to come out stronger and smarter and learn from the mistakes that you perhaps made. So the next fight you have, you can be more strategic. Now I want you to know something. I bought this belt. It's of course not real, but I want you to know that all of us this morning are heavyweight champions of the world. That you can make it. Don't give in. And don't let your opponent, whatever it is this morning, intimidate you. I want to thank you so much this morning for tuning in. I want you to have a great day. I want you to have a good week. And more importantly, I want you to stay inspired. Until next time, this is Karen. Take care.